Okay, so in this mural, the first thing we did was to brainstorm what would be the jobs performed in the source code stage group. And later on, we would focus on the code review category because that's what we are working on specifically for this OKR. And so we did asynchronously. We had like a column for Daniel, one for Katherine, one for myself, and we just brainstormed one day what could be the jobs and focusing on the jobs themselves and not the statements. And then the next day we met and we spent like 45 minutes just arranging all of these stickies in affinity clusters and just naming them and grouping them, not really thinking if they would then map to specific jobs or anything, was just more grouping them. And even some of the groups don't have necessarily to do with our stage group. For example, release and deploying a tag release to prod and things like that. But those are things that are related and are all in this continuum of the DevOps lifecycle and the stages that people use in GitLab. And after doing this grouping, we started talking about next steps, and me and Katherine started working on more in defining what could be the situations, the job performers, and then the main jobs. And then this list, which I was writing this, for me it was quicker than copying and pasting sticky notes. We then translated into this, what we have here now. And basically the yellow, I think it should be fairly straightforward, but the yellow stickies would be job performers. Then you can see the main jobs in orange, related jobs in pink. And we also define needs and outcomes in blue. And yeah, so the left side here with the author, reviewer, and operations manager are the ones I feel are more well-defined, and we have maybe a little bit more certainty, and less so on these on this side. And I feel like both operations manager and these here are related to the source code stage group, but usually like the main people that interact and that spend most of their time there are the authors and reviewers. But for example, a team manager or a product manager, like for example, the product manager providing requirements to the team, if they're not able to perform this job well, the author and also the reviewer, but mostly the author, won't know if they're doing the right thing, right? And then the reviewer won't have the necessary context to know if they're reviewing the right thing, basically. And so these are all related, but I don't think they're the main, like the juice, the core of what we do in source code. I'll stop there. I have other questions and we can expand further, but I'll stop there for any comments or questions from everyone. Not only you, Lorie, but I mean, if you have them.
I just want to say this looks great. And I'm assuming your brainstorm came from your experiences with customers and past research. So yay, because that gives you a higher level of confidence going into this. Some of the people tend to say don't brainstorm, but I know who did this. So you guys are using research to brainstorm. So that's perfect. And the main reason is they don't want people to start to get away from grounding it in the research. I'm not worried about that at all with you guys here. The main, so I love how you have an aspiration there, because it really does help to kind of ground all of the other stickies here. And your main jobs look great. I mean, they're at a high level. They should be for the main job. Review changes to the project.
Just for clarification, these here are, at least for me, they're questions right now. I don't think they're very well defined, and so we can get to these later. Or if, I don't know if you have any other comments or questions, or else I can explain them.
Okay, so I actually skipped over those when I looked. I went
Okay.
from the orange to the yellow to the light orange. So tell me the difference between that first level of those main
Okay.
jobs and then the ones underneath the personas.
Okay, so I think that's related to the questions that I have. Let me
Okay,
see. I
perfect.
think starting with this question, is the granularity of the main jobs right? Right? And
Mhm.
I'll
Okay, yes.
italicize right. Um, and so, for example, so Katherine, she started the sticky notes and then like these columns. And the first sticky note that she placed under author, which actually I think before it was contributor, but then I changed it to author, was this one: build the product or build a product. Um,
Okay.
and I thought that this is too broad, and this is not the single responsibility of this job performer. There are many job performers and many people building the product. And I also thought that it's
Mhm.
something that you can't do. It's difficult to define the done of building the product. And it's, I mean, some products have beginning, middle, and end, but others
Mhm.
don't, right? Others are
Right.
continuously evolving, like ours, like GitLab. And I also thought that even if someone is building the product, they don't do it like in a 8-hour shift. You know, it's not something that
Right.
you start and finish and you feel like, oh, I performed this job. Um, so I thought this was a bit too broad. And then we talked about this one, contributing changes to the project. And then I feel like, so in terms of granularity, this is how I would see it. So from top to bottom, from broadest to the most specific, like
Mhm.
an author could build a product, they could
Mhm.
contribute changes to the project, or they could commit changes through the command line interface to the project, you know? And this is
So
very specific and very technical.
yes. So
So,
let
yeah,
me share my screen here just for a second
sure.
because I want to show you. So yes, you're totally getting there. Let's just share this one and move that over so I can actually say yes, share. Okay, so in my workshop, we have not gotten to the point where we are in complete agreement yet. If that's coming on Monday. But we started talking about this, the granularity and the altitude of jobs to be done. So at a high level, you've got this slide where you've got a job. And those main jobs that you just showed, those are jobs. But I should say like the build the product, that's a wonderful job. It's really high level. It can encapsulate everything you're going to put underneath there. Contribute changes to the product, that starts to be a little bit more granular. That actually might turn into a user story. I need to contribute changes to the product so that I can because this. Um, sorry. And then you work down into the very, very specific tasks, which you say, to your point, they don't do this in 8 hours in one day. There's a job map here. There's tasks in this map that they take on over a series of days or weeks or whatever it is, the time scale. And tasks are basically just the things that they need to do in order to complete that user story, which is included in that main job. The other thing I wanted to share with you guys is this slide. And I shared this with Maria yesterday, and it seemed to help her a lot. So when you're having trouble figuring out which granularity you need to be at, asking why and asking how can help. It's kind of like the the 5 whys until you get to the root of the real problem. Um, if you're trying to figure out what the aspiration is for somebody, you have it here in your mural. But if you're having difficulty figuring out, am I at the highest level? You keep asking the why question. So in this example, somebody wants to go to a conference. Why? Why do they want to go? They want to develop professional skills. Why? They want to advance their career. Why? To have a better life. And I guess you could go even higher if you wanted to. Why do they want to have a better life? But you could stop there. It's broad. The same thing can happen when you start to ask the how question, because now you're going to ask it and you're getting more granular with each question you're asking, all the way down to what do they need to provide in order for their boss to let them go, a cost benefit estimation. How are they going to do that? That turns into your micro job or your task at the bottom here. So you're struggling with the same thing that I have talked to everybody about, that they're struggling with is this granularity and this altitude. And the other thing I wanted to show before we get back to your mural is the example in the Jobs to be Done playbook by Jim Kalbach. He looks at jobs on 4 different levels, and it's his book. It's got jobs in the title. That's why he uses jobs for each one of these levels. But basically, your aspiration is what you have. It's perfect. It's an ideal change of state. It's very high level. Then you've got your big job or main job, which you're calling your main job. And then you have a little job. And for him, that corresponds to stages in a job. So for his book, he also is having you map out the job. What is this? I want to make code changes. What does that mean? How many stages are in that job? How many tasks are in each stage? You guys haven't gotten there yet. It might help you to do that. I don't know if it will. And then the micro jobs are the same things as tasks. So you can kind of map that back here to your job. Is you've got your aspiration above your job. You've got your main job and those light yellow stickies. You've got your user stories, which are very similar to this micro job idea, which is when you map a job out, you've got these user stories that are in that job map. And then you've got your tasks. So I just wanted to show that for you guys so you can have a little bit of understanding about where we're going with it, and then see if that might help you to figure out how to frame some of this here. So like in this example, so you've got your aspiration perfectly. Build a great product, perfect. You've got your main job, build the product. Yes, that's perfect as a main job. And now what you need to do is you need to break the line between that level of granularity and the other 2 levels of granularity, which is basically between user stories and tasks. So I would say contribute changes to the project. That's probably a user story because it's not a singular task. There are other tasks involved in that user story to achieve that action of contributing changes to the project. Let's see, there's related job in the middle column, integrate changes into a project. That might be a task depending on I don't know how many steps are involved, if it's a button to integrate the changes or something like that. So there's a distinction between, as we all know, tasks and user stories. Tasks you do to achieve the user story. You do the user story to achieve the job. Those kinds of layers. Hit me with questions.
Yeah, it's hard to get the granularity right.
Yes. So asking how and why will help. So like building the product, how am I going to build the product? We're going to move down. We're going to get more granular. I'm going to contribute changes to the project. That's great. That's getting into that user story kind of area of I need to because so that. How am I going to contribute changes to the project?
So,
Where are those tasks?
Let me just ask one question. So I think if we're going to say that the main job is for example, for authors is to build the product, we're basically like this job is shared by all of GitLab stages, right?
Yes. And so I was going to say jobs are persona agnostic. They are never a author wants to build the job or build the project. It is I need to build the product. I doesn't attach to anybody other than it's like the royal we. Like I. User stories is when you start to say, as an author, I need to do this so that I can because of this. That's when it becomes much more persona centric, because the idea of a job to be done is that it is broad. It's not as broad as an aspiration, but it is broad. It is meant to not be tied to a specific persona. It can be, but it's never, that persona is never mentioned in the job to be done grammar.
Yeah, I think one thing here, and I think that's exactly right. With the author, I guess you could say that multiple personas could be an author. I just see it as a bucket for understanding these different parts of source code management. But yeah, it definitely isn't something you would put into the statement or you would orient around.
Sorry, Katherine. It seems like the author is more of a role that somebody takes on to complete a task.
I mean, yes, but I mean, and so who would be the performer of building the product? It's everyone. There is no single performer. Like that's the thing. It's, I think build a product is too broad of a job, to be honest.
Okay.
Let me try to.
Yeah.
Let me try to ask from another angle, because we are using this as input then also for the category maturity scorecard process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling we are now looking at main job as very all of GitLab. But in this discussion, it's more create. And if we take build a great product as the job to be done, to be investigated by the category maturity scorecard, I don't know how we would perform that in a 15-minute session.
Right, yes. And to that point, Marcel, I actually took a note when we were doing the workshop on Wednesday, that I need to go in there and I need to specify that it's not that you're testing in some instances you're testing an aspect of a job to be done, but what you're really testing are the user stories and tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are going to be specific to the thing that you've just built or designed, right? Because you're allowing them, that thing is allowing them to do the tasks that they need to do to complete their user story, which is related to the job to be done. But it is not really testing, in some cases, the entire job to be done. Like you say, this thing goes across the whole entire suite of products. But what you would be doing is testing that user scenario and the tasks that attach to it, which level up to that main job.
That would mean for the main job or the aspiration, we should also look at, are we aligned across stages, across sections, that this is actually for this persona the same? And if not, that might be a symptom of a larger problem.
Yes. Yes, and that's why the jobs are supposed to be broad, so you can look across and get alignment across silos and business lines and stage groups and whatever we want to call them.
Yeah, in that case, it feels to me like the team has done a great job putting all the granularities already into the structure. Mm-hmm. And it's just a different focus for where do we as create focus on, or as source code, mm-hmm. and making sure we don't lose the part above it out of sight, but not taking that as the main part to be investigated by the category maturity scorecard.
Right.
Got it.
So basically, Marcel, what you're saying is that we should focus on the user stories, right? Because that's what we're going to do with the category maturity scorecard. And yeah, I just think that the way I've seen and handled with jobs to be done in the past, it wasn't this broad because it was maybe not at the task level, but maybe more at the user story level, because that's mm-hmm. how you would how everyone understands when they're building something. Is it contributing towards this, right, or not, right? And then that would contribute to the aspiration. I mean, at the end of the day, the aspiration of, like, all of aspirations would probably map to Maslow's pyramid, right? Either someone wants to survive, either someone wants to be happy, either someone wants to be accomplished. Like that's like, if we go all the way, if we ask all of the whys, that's where we will probably land. So I think if we say that the main job for a big number of job performers is to build the product, like every time someone creates a feature proposal, they're going to say, yes, this aligns with your job to be done of building the product. And there's nothing we can say about it because it's so broad that anyone can fit, anything that we do fits in build the product.
Right. And again, and that's why I have to meet with everybody for another hour on Monday, because we didn't see the other part of that is and I don't like this as a person, I don't think, because it's that whole phrase, it depends. So now that we talked about all that, it still depends. Like, you could look at all this and go, my group needs more granularity in our job to be done. We're going to go down a level for our job to be done for create or for secure, whatever it is, that's that group. And you can right now. We have to decide internally as GitLab, especially as the UX department and product, how we want to handle that granularity. Is that going to be a job to be done to go step down, or is that going to be turned into a user scenario? I don't know. To me, there's no wrong answer there, which is why it makes me angry. I wish it was a little bit more prescriptive, because I think it'd be a lot easier for people to do it and internalize it if it was more prescriptive. But everything I have read is it depends. So if you feel in your area right now, you need a more granular main job, I say make one and work towards meeting that main job. But it still needs to be persona agnostic. So that's a tough part, because what I'm seeing is everybody's getting user stories and jobs to be done conflated, because the grammatical structure is very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And they're very, very used to using personas. As a software developer, I need to. You have to take the persona out of the job to be done, because it's not meant to be that specific to a type of person or a type of role. It is meant to be a little bit broader than that. The specificity comes in with the user scenarios or the user stories.
So how would you define, like, if the main job was build the product, who would be the performer?
It could be more than one person or more than one role, because it's broad.
How do you define, how do you say, like, this is the who of build the product?
I would assume it would be the author, reviewer, operations manager, whoever's in charge of contributing to this main job.
Okay, so there can be roles, basically.
Yes. Yeah. However you want to define roles / personas, whatever floats your boat, like people, mm-hmm. Groups of people represented by something. Yeah. So you can, and that's why they're agnostic to a specific person, role, persona, or groups of people, groups of personas, because they're meant to be at a higher level and allow you to have more granularity further you work down. So you could have another level of a job underneath that main job number 2, I don't know, medium job, to say, like, I, meaning the royal we, I need to contribute changes to the project. That could be your second level job. Now that might be a more specific person you have in mind, but you never actually say it's always the author. When you do your user scenarios or your user stories, it's, as the author, I need to commit changes through the CLI to this project so that whatever. As a reviewer, I need to approve changes to the project via the CLI so that I can, because. So that's why they're still trying to be persona or role agnostic, at the job level, because those user stories are going to possibly be for more than one job performer. They want you to keep the job performer in mind, so you're not trying to make somebody do a job that doesn't need to be doing that job, but it's not that you're mentioning them and thinking of them specifically in that job. You're getting more granular the more you go down and applying those personas at the user story level and the task level.
Yeah,
And it might make more sense if you guys have mapped out, I'm sorry, I don't know if you mapped out the job, like what it really actually means to do this and who plays in what part as you go through the process. That might help. I don't know. You guys may have already done that.
Yeah, I just feel that we should have the same level of granularity should be applied across all of the stages of GitLab, so that we have a common language to communicate and agree on what are the boundaries and how people cross stages, and also to properly evaluate the category maturity, or else we're going to be evaluating differently. And I feel I just think that if the job is too broad, there won't be any anchors. People won't use the job, because I mean, even if you look at the stage group or the stage names, like create, plan, everyone agrees that this feature is in plan. Everyone agrees that this feature is in create, and this need is solved by that stage and that stage, because it's so broad. It's already in the names. So if we're going that broad, I don't know if it will help us, basically.
Well, and Pedro, to be honest, I don't know if we are, because that's where that group, the working group, has not gotten to a consensus yet. I suspect we'll get where you're going on Monday. We need to have our jobs to be done are going to start more granular than what the other people, Ulrich and Kalbach, prescribe, because we need them to start more granular for our purposes, because we're using them for more than one thing. I don't want to say we have to do it that way. I need everybody to come to a consensus with me on that, so then we can say, okay, this is useful. We can use it for the category maturity scorecards. We can use it across stages. We can use this and apply and look at across everybody to see how that one more granular job performs. I suspect that's where we'll land on like a medium level granularity for our jobs to be done, and then use like build the product as our aspiration.
Okay.
Or build a great product. I mean, that could work too. I suspect. I just need them to all come along where you already are with me on Monday, and then we'll be able to say as a group, this will work for us. This will work for product. This will work for design, and we'll go forward with it.
When do you think you'll have some like have been able to formalize that feedback?
I hope Monday, because we have got another hour, and so that's kind of where we talked about it for about 25 minutes on Wednesday, and we got halfway through, I think, the discussion. And hopefully people will go and think about it some more, come back to me on Monday, and we'll talk about it. That was the biggest sticking point that we had. And I think if we can crack it, it will answer a lot of the other questions they had about how do I apply this to my product? How do I apply this to building features? This is the issue. This altitude and granularity is the issue.
Okay.
And so
good to know
I'm
that
optimistic.
we're not struggling with it alone. But yeah, thank you so much.
No, you're not. And I say in the meantime, pick the level of granularity for the job to be done that will help you get clarity. That's why we're doing it.
Okay.
So, but if you find yourself wanting to say author, that's probably going to be a user story. So try to get it at least a little bit higher to be a little bit broader, but feel free to go lower in the granularity if you need to for your purposes to get good guidance.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Lorie.
All right, hit me up anytime.
I've been thinking about it sometimes, like maybe there are the jobs to be done that are something you would put in the handbook, and then there are the user stories and tasks that you're actually using in your day-to-day work. But I'll be interested to hear what comes out of the working group.
Me too.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'll post this to
Yes.
GitLab and filters so that other people that have the same questions can see it. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.